just in terms of fitting these figures into their cultural context in the different ways you described, your biography of Jesus is subtitled an intimate biography, and your book on Paul is an intellectual biography. So they're somewhat different in focus, and you do delve into the intimate details of Jesus' life there. So I think that's where some of the imagination or speculation may come out for some readers. But I think one excellent example in that book of what you were describing would be with what you explain at the beginning of the book, and that's the suspicions about Jesus' fatherhood that would have sort of dogged him for his entire life and would have influenced his formation. And although we can't say with 100% certainty because we don't have those details, I think this is a great example of taking that cultural anthropology or cultural context and then trying to situate the individual life within that. Would you like to share a few words on that topic?
Of course, yeah, thank you very much. You have indeed hit on why I think the word intimate is in the subtitle. I say I think it's there because it was actually my editor's idea. I have to give him credit. It was then Andrew Corbin at Doubleday, and he simply said, well, I just think the term intimate captures what's going on in the book. And I suspect it was because of my treatment of Jesus as a Mamzer, as a person whose paternity cannot be established. Now, here again, anachronism is something we have to watch, as we do in the case of the term rabbi. Mamzer is not defined in the first century the way it is later. That is, when it is known that a person's paternity is irregular. Rather, it is applied when it is not known that that paternity is regular. And this results in a category which, according to the book of Deuteronomy, leads to the exclusion of a person. And according to rabbinic literature, in this case, I think quite accurately, leads to an extreme limitation of the marital prospects of such a person. So let's consider the way in which the New Testament refers to the birth of Jesus. First of all, pointing out that there is not one story in the New Testament. There are, in fact, different ways of referring to Jesus' father in the New Testament. In some of them, it is quite straightforwardly Joseph. And there's clearly a body of belief within the New Testament, as there was after the time of the New Testament, to the effect that Joseph was the actual father of Jesus, which is necessary if Jesus is to be considered to be the son of David in the usual understanding. On the other hand, obviously, the best known version of Jesus' birth is that he had no human father, that his father was actually God. And finally, within the New Testament, again, Gospel according to John refers to Jesus' opponents, referring to him as born of fornication. So we have three different versions. And what strikes me is on any of those versions, Jesus is still a Mamzer. Why? Well, obviously, if he's born of fornication, it was an illicit union of some kind, which would exclude him. If God were the father, you couldn't prove it. And therefore, the question about his birth remains. And finally, even if Joseph is the father, which I think is the most likely explanation, the New Testament clearly states that Mary and Joseph were not living together at the time she became pregnant and was known to be pregnant, which is what leads to the scandal and causes the category of Mamzer being deployed. So by considering the category in its cultural context in its time, I think one can understand how it's applied to Jesus. And it's applied that way, of course, not only in the New Testament, but also in later Talmudic literature. but also one can see by anthropological means how it is that the category of Mamzer becomes a shaping influence. There has been a great deal of literature in the scholarship of the New Testament devoted to the question of Jesus' particular affinity with outsiders. I have a suggestion for understanding that, namely that he was an outsider, so that being in that category gave him a natural resonance with other people in that position or in a similar position.
Very interesting statement to think about and reflect on there.
Shalom friends, Dr. Eli Lizorkin Eisenberg is here for you with great news. Today we introduce our new 7-day tuition-free trial for you to study with Israel Bible Center. That's right, you heard me right. This is 7-day, a whole week of studying before you pay any of tuition at all. You will now be able to see for yourself what is the Certificate in Jewish Context and Culture program. You will get over 45 crash courses on variety of Jewish context and culture topics. You will be granted access to more than 55 roundtable talks with world-leading scholars of Jewish background, of New Testament and the Hebrew Bible. You will truly be surprised at the value you're going to receive from studying at Israel Bible Center. You've got nothing to lose, so go ahead and click on the link, sign up for your 7 free tuition days of trial.